Hey, what's going on everybody? This is Chase at Rocky Mountain ATV and today we're going to walk you through the different size options for the Fantic e-bike lineup and help you decide which one is best for you. Hello and welcome. Thank you for checking in. If you're shopping for an e-bike, congratulations. We all know how awesome these things are. If this is your first time looking at e-bikes, you've never ridden one before, well, I'm going to tell you right now, you are in for a treat. Now that being said, look, we all know these things are not cheap. They are expensive. You're making an investment, and one very important aspect about choosing one is getting the right size that's going to be best for you to give you the most fun out of your mountain bike long term. That being said, there's also a lot of gray area, especially shopping online. Look, you don't get to sit on this bike, you don't get to ride it first, so you might not be quite sure what's going to be best. So we're going to help clear up those answers and talk about the different sizing options, give you a few numbers, and a little bit of education to help you make a good decision on which size is best for you. So if you do look on the product pages for the Fantic e-bikes, if you scroll to the bottom, you're going to see that they do have a sizing chart. And that sizing chart is a good starting point, but there's a lot of gray area because when you look at it, all the sizes overlap each other on both ends. Me, for example, I'm 5'7", so I fit kind of right in the middle of a medium. But I could, in theory, I could ride a small, or I could even step up and go to a size large. So the question is, well, what size is going to be best for me? Now the hard part is that there is no clear and cut answer to that. A lot of it comes down to rider preference, what type of riding that you're going to be doing. But that's why we're going to dive in a little bit deeper today so you have a good understanding and know exactly what size you're going to want. So nowadays, the size of a mountain bike is based off a number called reach. And what that reach number is that if you were to draw a line vertically from the center of your bottom bracket straight up and then horizontally across to the center of your top tube, that is your reach number. And the reason that the reach number is so important is because that is the number that you rely on when you're in this standing position. Now this 1.5 trail that we have here is in a size small, and the reach on this bike is 407 millimeters. You go up to 433 on a size medium and 453 on a size large. And here's why it's important to get the sizing right. If you're on a bike that is, say, too small for you, well, in that scenario, you're gonna feel like your hands and your feet are really close together, like your handlebars are kind of sitting in your lap. And you're also gonna feel like on steep descents, like you have to really fight and push forward to keep your body weight over the back of the bike. And that's also gonna make it feel like it's not as stable at higher speeds or on those steep descents. So that's why getting that reach number correctly is really gonna aid you in those situations. Now in the seated position, the number that's gonna affect you there is what's called your effective top tube length. And that number, this is how you draw that up. If you come straight up from your seat tube and then directly across to the center of your top tube, that is your top tube length. Now on this size small in that 1.5 trail, that number is 573 millimeters. Now what's kind of nice about the effective top tube length is that although you can't modify the actual length of the bike itself, you can adjust a couple things to kind of fine tune the bike and get it as comfortable as you can. For example, you could go to a little bit longer stem, or you could even move your seat back a little bit on the rails if you wanted to open up the bike a little bit. And on the flip side, if you want to maybe bring things in a little bit, if you feel like you're overextended, a little bit shorter stem, you can move your seat forward on the rails. And like I talked about earlier with that reach number, if you get a bike and you do feel like you're a little bit crowded in that cockpit, you could also go to a little longer stem to open that up a little bit. You just have to remember, however, that with your stem length, you don't want to veer too far from what comes stock because you start to mess with the balance of the bike a little bit. So after learning this information, well, the question is, what size bike do you need? So here's my advice. Always start with your height as a good starting point. So for me on that sizing guide, 5'7", I'm right in a size medium. However, for me personally, I ride steep aggressive terrain and I like the feeling of having a little bit more room in the cockpit, so I would probably bump up to a size large. However, one thing I also do want to point out is that the Fantic e-bikes and their reach numbers tend to be a little bit shorter than most of the other common brands out there and their e-bikes. And knowing that, I would step up to a size large. But you have to remember that a lot of this is rider preference. Now, if I wasn't planning to do that aggressive riding and I was gonna leave those steep descents alone, then I'd probably be just fine with the size medium. Now, one thing I also do wanna point out is that, like I said, rider preference, because a shorter bike is gonna be a little bit more playful, it's gonna turn a little bit easier and pedal a little bit better. The longer bikes, however, are gonna be a little bit more stable, again, at steep descents and going at those higher speeds. Now, a couple other things that we want to talk about. We mentioned how important that reach number is, but another common measurement that you're going to hear pretty often is the head tube angle. And in general terms, the lower the number of the head tube angle, the more slack or raked out the bike is. And what that means is that it's going to be more stable at higher speeds. Now, in general, most of your trail and enduro bikes are probably going to be between about 63 and 66 degrees. So like I said, the lower the number, the more slack or raked out the bike is. Now for these bikes, for example, with the 1.5 trail, this bike ranges from 66 degrees to 66.5 in a size large. But it's also important, I do want to point out that with the 1.7 and the 1.9, they range from 65 to 65.5. So it's a little bit more slack with those two models because those are geared more towards downhill. And the last thing I will talk about, this is important to know, is if you're looking at the different models, the 1.5, the 1.7, the 1.9, the 1.7 and the 1.9 do have longer reach measurements than the 1.5. And the reason for that, it makes sense. These bikes are geared for more aggressive downhill riding, so they make them a little bit longer to add a little bit more stability in those types of scenarios. So hopefully after listening to this is kind of giving you a good idea of what size bike is going to be best for you. Like I said, I feel it's always safer to err on the side of going one size larger. Remember, there are a couple things that you can change to modify the bike to get it right just for you, but you want to have a good starting point. If you have questions or comments, we would love to get those answered for you if you want some more feedback. So leave that in the comment section below. To see all the different Fantic bikes and other e-bikes that we offer, click on the link or just head over to RockyMountainATVMC.com. We also have videos that you can watch where we break down the different componentry of the different models within the Fantic lineup. So if you find, say, maybe the 1.7, but not quite sure, do you want the carbon or the trail, you can watch that video. That will help you decide which one of those models will be best. If you want to see more great e-bike content like this, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to the Rocky Mountain YouTube channel to always stay up to date on cool content like you just saw. I am Chase, and we'll see you on the trails.